I just kind of figured, well, our house is going to be rubble by the time we go back, so I may as well just be detached. Of course, to be honest, I was more worried about us staying alive at that point. But it really puts things in perspective. It's like, you know, I could even lose my Mac, my laptop, you know, my iPod. It's like there was nothing worth going back to get. You know, one man died because he ran into the house to get his Dominoes. It cost him his life. So we went down, and I'm expecting a pile of rubble, but that's all we're seeing everywhere. I mean, things that have been there for 100 years. The old big Catholic church is just part of the history there. It's just a big pile of rocks and blocks, now bricks, broken up blocks everywhere. A piece of the history. Things will never be the same. Buildings that you just have known. I've known them since I've lived in Haiti. They're just gone. And so you're driving everywhere, and there's destruction. There's people still screaming, crying. A lot of people got relatives in other parts of the country they can't call. They can't find out how they are because the phones are out. So anyway, that was a pretty lousy night. And of course, needless to say, I was praying, but can't say through any of this. There's not a question of losing your faith. I definitely didn't feel like I was in the loop. And so what's going on right now? Some people say, well, that was God's judgment on Haiti, or, oh, it was just an earthquake, you know. And people in Haiti have asked me, well, what do you think it was? Was this God's judgment? I just tell them, you know, he didn't talk to me about it.
If you did, you would have done it.
I mean, I could point at all the voodoo temples that caved in and say that was God's judgment. But then there's some churches and some pastors that I think were pretty good pastors. And their churches are rebel too. And even though our house, of course, ended up standing so far, and people say, God's with you, you're blessed. And yes, in a way, but in another way, too, I feel connected to a lot of these people that are hurting and suffering right now, and I don't want to go around and tell everybody, you know, we're blessed. And, well, how about the church that just crumbled over there? Well, I guess God likes us more than he likes you. I don't know. I do know this. And this is strange, but this is the best thing I can offer. I know one thing that definitely came to me through all of this, whether God's judgment. I mean, I could pick 10 reasons for God to destroy any country on the world. It's just, well, they're being punished for voodoo. Well, there's lots of stuff in Haiti. There's lots of stuff here. There's lots of stuff in Canada. And there's lots of stuff in any country you want to choose. But I do know this. What actually came to me is, and this will sound not very enlightening until you really get a hold of it, I said, you know what, I'm thankful this doesn't happen every day. And what I mean by that is, do you know how thankful everybody in Haiti is right now when we go all day and the earth doesn't shake? You don't even think about that here. I never, ever, in all my prayers, if you would have said, thank the Lord for 1,000 things, the earth not shaking would not have been on that list. I have never thought about being thankful that the earth is not shaking. I had never thought about that. And all of a sudden, if we have a day and the earth is calm and doesn't dance, we are thrilled. We're jump up and down happy because the earth is still today. And there's so many things to be thankful for that we can't even imagine until we lose them. And so we have not had many of those days. Actually, what we're thankful for, the first few days, we're thankful when an hour would go by. They registered over 100 aftershocks, big ones, and that doesn't count the little like that. I almost hate those because it's just like a poke, you know. It's like you're trying to relax and you're trying to say, all right, we got to get on with things here. You know, and you can't, no way to poke back. And you just have to deal with it. And so anyway, it's changed our life. It's changed our way of thinking. I'm not doing good. I'm getting long answers to these questions. But at any rate, that's where, after the first day, that's where we left it. Everybody's still just now starting to get news. The phone lines stayed out for over a week. So a lot of people still didn't know. It took a week to find out about their relatives. Some of them had lived, just some of them had died. There were rumors going around. We had heard one guy died and found out he was alive. One of the girls at our house spent all day crying because her uncle died and found out later he was alive. There was a guy that I used to see all the time, tore me up. This guy, we used to go to this place downtown Pettigrew. Every time we go down there, this one guy that used to do shoes, he'd always go, Fred! That's Brother Ed. He'd always, Fred! You know, just a guy, and I just liked him. He never asked me for anything, just a guy. He just was always happy to see me, and I was always happy. How's it going, man? All right, how you doing? I always chat on my way in the door. And somebody I sent one of the kids to take some pictures because we couldn't drive around town in the first couple of days because of all the damage. Or streets were blocked everywhere. So he went on a bicycle and went walking, and he brought a picture of this body, this man, dead man in the street. He said, that's the guy. The guy that used to say hi to you every time you went in. And I did some good crying for that. Like 2 days before I left, I'm down in that area. Fred! It was him. I said, you're not dead! No, you're not either. I said, man, we had a very happy reunion. So that's happy for us, but it was a picture of somebody. So that's why even your joys are still bound. Yeah, I'm happy that my guy's not dead, but I don't know who this other guy was. And they estimate, I think it's going to go a lot higher. They're still digging bodies, but they estimate at this point 230,000 people died. And they think it may be as high as 300,000 by the time they finish digging bodies. So, and we had bodies, Bordermans had bodies, there was just bodies, everybody was mixed, the living, the dead, the zombies, all of us just mixed in this hazy world together, trying to figure out what to do next.
Can you tell us, and I don't even know how to follow up, but just, can you tell, and I know you're processing this in front of all of us, so it's beautiful. In a moment, we're going to pray for you. What has God done in you in 7 weeks? And what do these people on the TV screen mean to you? And what can we do? I know we can pray. All of that. Can you filter all that for us, what God's doing and how we can help?
This church has actually helped Haiti a few times before helping Haiti with school. And we definitely want to thank you for that. Haiti's always had a lot of problems. There's been people dying all along, and just weren't so many in one single day. It's a hungry place. It's another planet. What we're doing, what's been done for one, believe it or not, one of the biggies is just being there. You know, I thought, you know, we're going to have a lot of kids, and a lot of kids are shook up. There's little 3-year-olds that still shake just from time to time, just shake for no reason. Well, since the 12th of January, when the earthquake hit, a lot of people lost their families. There's a lot of miracles. I shared this one. I got to share this. If you're on Facebook, you already know this, but if you're not, it's just powerful. They brought this little girl, 4-year-old, into the clinic, and they were looking at her, and there were scars all over. She had a big gash right here, and like a hole that big, right down to the skull. And you're just looking at skull. And I won't even get into all the wounds. I helped with the clinic translate for the first couple of weeks, and all the destroyed, mangled bodies and people coming in. But this little girl was relatively calm, but she had a big hole there. And like I said, you're just looking right at her skull. And I got talking to her some while the doctors were figuring out what they were going to give her. She'd already had her head wrapped up, and so they'd unwrapped it and were checking it out. And I got talking to her, and we all assumed that, you know, that all happened together. And it turns out that the big hole by the side of her head there was not the earthquake. This little girl, 4 years old, had been in a house with her little brother and another girl that just was there visiting, a teenage girl, I guess, that worked in the house when the earthquake hit, and the house totally collapsed on them. The little boy got out, crawled out, and came out alive. But the other two, the 4-year-old girl, the other girl, were wiped out. And so the people outside are yelling, screaming, hollering, and trying to call, and there's no response from the people inside. So they assumed they're dead. And so they were afraid to stay in that area, so they went away for a couple of days. and they gathered the necessary stuff for a funeral. They had a little casket made for the little girl, had a bigger casket made for the other girl. And they came back after 4 days to the house, the rubble, and they had a guy that now had a big pick. So he was able to chop through the concrete, and they were chopping, and they pulled the older girl out, pulled her body out, and they had clothes for her, and kept coffin for her. They put her in her coffin, and now they got to start digging and try to find the other little girl. And the pick went through the concrete and went right by her head. And she cried. And everybody was freaking out. She's not dead, although she came that close to being dead. And so all of a sudden that changed her. And anyway, they ended up bringing her out and everything. She lost her father that day. Her father died.